It was born on the samurai battlefields of feudal Japan. Used in warfare for centuries, it's become a key component of mixed martial arts. Now we're fighting our way through Japan. From ancient samurai temples to modern police gyms. From the mega city of Tokyo to the mountaintop quiet of a samurai master.
In a quest to unlock judo's fascinating history and powerful techniques. And it's all for one ultimate goal, a fight to the finish with a judo champ.
There are hundreds of distinct fighting styles in the world. They are practiced in every nation and by every people. Now, Jason Chambers, a mixed martial artist and professional fighter, and Bill Duff, a former pro football player and wrestler, are embarked on a mission to explore the history and techniques of these incredible martial arts. And at the end of each journey, one of these two warriors will face the ultimate test. They'll try to survive a real fight with a true human weapon.
Judo. Derived from the battlefield art of the samurai jiu-jitsu, Judo was one of the most effective fighting styles in the world. And it was born here, in the island nation of Japan.
Its capital is Tokyo, and it's the largest metropolitan area in the world, with over 35 million residents. It's also the epicenter of the martial art of judo. And many of the best judo competitors, or judokas, train here at Tokai University.
Though the word judo literally means the gentle way, watching these guys, it seems anything but. To win in judo, you either throw your opponent to the ground or force him to submit with arm-breaking joint locks or deadly chokeholds. Kicks and punches are illegal, but that doesn't mean judo doesn't hurt.
Modern sport judo is only 130 years old, but its history can be traced to the fighting art of the most famous warriors in history, the samurai. The first samurai emerged in 9th century Japan. It was a time of civil strife, and landowners sought protection by hiring battle-hardened Japanese warriors. Initially, these warriors were little more than hired thugs. But by 1192, the samurai had gone from crude mercenaries to the ruling class of Japan.
Their power was cemented when samurai general Minamoto Yoritomo established a military government. As the top officer, or shogun, he essentially became the ruler of Japan. For the next 700 years, Japan was ruled by a series of shoguns. These rulers kept their power through armies of samurai. Trained in all the fighting arts, including bow, lance, sword, and a deadly hand-to-hand fighting style that came to be known as jiu-jitsu.
Designed for use against fully armored opponents on the battlefield, jiu-jitsu didn't focus on kicks or punches, which would be useless against samurai armor. Instead, jiu-jitsu was built around the principle of using body position and momentum to gain dominant position with the throw, and then using eye gouging, bone breaking, chokes, and close-in weapons like daggers and chains to kill your opponent. But the throw was the key. A well-executed throw on a man wearing full armor could deliver up to an amazing 14,000 pounds of force, like having a grand piano dropped on you. And once stunned and on his back, even an armored foe was helpless. When did judo first evolve from jiu-jitsu?
Professor Jigoro Kano, Japanese educator and a great jiu-jitsu expert, is credited as the founder of judo. He established his judo school in 1882 in downtown Tokyo.
Kano grew up schooled in jiu-jitsu, but his goal was to take the overly complicated, centuries-old techniques and streamline them. First, Kano eliminated all the moves that relied only on superior strength, as well as the gouges and weapons techniques, and focused on the core of jiu-jitsu, using your opponent's own momentum to throw him to the ground, and then using ground techniques to gain submission.
Kano's new sport was called judo.
Can you tell us about the rules a little bit? Like, what are some of the ways you can score points, and how does a match end?
There's two phases. One is a standing position, which is called tachiwaza, emphasize throws. And the other one is called newaza, or hatamewaza. It emphasizes grappling.
The standing phase of a judo match is a punishing version of Newton's laws of motion. As a judoka moves across the mat, his momentum is constantly shifting. Rather than meet that force with force, like in Muay Thai or Karate, the idea of judo is to apply a small force of your own to redirect that energy. All throws rely on this concept.
That's Uchimata right there.
Got it! But only by positioning your body in the exact right place at the exact time can you maximize the effect of your move. To lift a 180-pound man off his feet and hurl him to the mat takes about 300 pounds of force. But take that same man already moving and apply a small force to his unstable center of gravity, and even a weak judoka can hurl a much larger man many feet.
If the standing phase is all about Newton, groundwork owes its effectiveness to Archimedes. Pins, chokes, and joint locks are based on the principle of the lever. Create a fulcrum near a vital joint and use the principles of leverage to dramatically increase the amount of force you can bring to bear. Because bone is up to 40 times stronger than concrete, it's very tough to break. But joints can be destroyed with much less force.
It's really an intense chess game. I mean, these guys aren't just punching back and forth. They're using each other's momentum to get their sweeps and their throws off. I can't wait to get tossed like a rag doll.
Time to get dressed and hit the mat ourselves.
Modeled on the Japanese kimono, the judo gi is comprised of a loose pair of pants and a heavy cotton top. As for the color, white is a traditional symbol of death and purity in Japan.
For hundreds of years, samurai wore white underneath their armor to signify their readiness to die on the battlefield. That intense conviction is proudly carried on by judokas today.
What would your strategy be in a judo match?
Keep a low center of gravity. Don't let them throw me. If those foot sweeps start coming, then your time is pretty limited.
Dojos are considered sacred ground in Japan, so we bowed before entering to show respect. Inside, we met Nakanishi-sensei, the head coach at Tokai, and his assistant head coach, Agamizu-sensei.
Come all the way from the United States to learn judo, and we heard this is the best place to do it.
Okay, Nakanishi-sensei said he understands your desire, and today Agamizu-sensei, assistant coach, will teach you judo.
He told us to explore the samurai roots of judo, and then return to Tokai for a match against his champ, Yasutaka Okawa.
With a combined record of 10-1, Okawa has been ranked third in the entire country. Well, we got one of the top fighters from one of the top teams in all of Japan in judo. I think we might be in just a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, they referred to him as Mr. If the teachers are calling him Mr., that's a lot of respect.
Like in MMA, all judo matches begin from the standing position, so mastering a throw is vital. A good clean throw will not only take an opponent down to the mat, it can also begin and end a fight in one stunning move.
I've trained a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and have used moves like these in my MMA fights.
That's good potential.
Good potential?
Yeah.
Yes! But these guys are already showing us how much more technique there is to learn. Little things like how many degrees to turn your hips or exact placement of your feet can make a huge difference.
Nowhere was that principle more apparent than a throw Tokai champs are famous for, Uchimata.
But Uchimata is one of the most difficult techniques in the judo. You want to try that?
Sure.
1, 2, and 3.
To execute the Uchimata, a judoka grabs an opponent and pulls, off-balancing him and giving him a forward momentum. Then he twists his hips and inserts his thigh beneath his opponent's center of gravity. Then he lifts his thigh while still pulling forward and throws his opponent over his hip and onto the mat.
Shredding it. Woo!
The throw works just like a crowbar, where your leg is the lever and your hip is the fulcrum. The trick is positioning your body in just the right place. If you're just an inch off the placement of your thigh and hip, the amount of energy needed to throw an opponent can more than double. But performed correctly, Uchimata requires almost no energy, yet it can deliver up to 5,000 pounds of force. If it weren't for the mat, a throw like Uchimata would be enough to cause serious injury or even paralysis.
1, 2, yeah, that's it.
Fast learner.
That's a great move if you can get it. If you can remember all the things you got to do and throw your leg back and twerk the right way, I mean, it's really impressive. The guy goes right over.
This throw could get us through the standing phase of a judo match. But we haven't even begun to learn the ground fighting techniques that will help us take on a judo champ.
To do that, we're headed for a crash course in the down and dirty chokes used by the samurai to kill on the battlefield. We're exploring the back streets of Tokyo in search of a one-of-a-kind institution, the Kodo Gakusha Judo Boarding School. Graduates of the school have won 12 world championships.
Bill and I are hoping they can teach us a few dominant ground techniques to help us in our fight. And just like in MMA, groundwork is key. Chokes, pins, and joint locks. Brutal moves derived directly from the killing art of samurai jiu-jitsu. Samurai training began at home, usually around age 5. It focused on the traditional weapons of the sword and the bow, as well as jiu-jitsu. But the sons of wealthy families were sent to special academies, called ryus, to master the warfare arts that would define their lives. At the ryus, there was one main thing on the curriculum: battle. This same tradition is alive today at Kodo Gakusha Boarding School.
What should we watch out for with Sensei?
Well, he's a pretty strict guy. And he likes to read a rough practice, so I'll be ready to work.
The opening exercises confirmed that these guys meant business.
Keep your head low and your butt down. There's snipers in those trees. Oh, yeah.
Exercises like these are designed to improve muscle strength, loosen up tight joints, and increase flexibility. 3 critical components necessary to survive the hours of punishment judokas endure.
I dare anyone to come try this for a couple hours and say it's not hard work. I've been on professional football fields and big wrestling rings. I need a warm-up for this warm-up.
He says that Bill probably can't pin him.
Bill, you said you can't pin him. That sounds like a challenge.
Slamming up on me, coach. The principles of judo are a lot different than wrestling. It's basically everything that you were taught not to do in wrestling, you do in judo. A lot of the bad habits, like high hips and laying on your back, that's perfect technique in judo. So it's very hard to make that transition. I think Jason's having an easier time because he has a jiu-jitsu background.
My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training is coming in handy. The way I use my body and many of the throws and locks are very similar. It's easy to see that Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu evolved from the same true samurai warfare. But in Japan, the split between Judo and Jiu-Jitsu began with the end of the samurai.
In 1852, the arrival of Commodore Perry's steamships confronted the Japanese with the vastly superior naval technology of the West. It became clear that the fighting style of the samurai couldn't survive the modern world. The point was made brutally clear during the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, when an army of 30,000 samurai faced off against the Western-trained army of the Emperor Meiji. Nearly every one of the samurai was killed.
With the end of the samurai, Jiu-Jitsu fell out of favor in Japan, to be replaced by the more scientific Judo. But old-school Jiu-Jitsu didn't vanish entirely. It survived in a few isolated dojos and in other parts of the world where samurai and their descendants settled. Especially Brazil, where the Gracie family was taught Jiu-Jitsu from a Japanese immigrant and turned the art into one of the foundations of modern MMA.
And in MMA, one of the most famous techniques is called ground and pound. It's all about getting dominant position, just like on the battlefield, or the pin in Judo.
At the school, we warmed up by getting into and trying to get out of various pins.
There you go.
Even though he's much smaller than me, he uses his dominant position and counterweight of his legs to keep me on my back. This kind of groundwork is incredibly grueling.
You ever see when a T-Rex grabs a human being by the top half and their legs are swinging out? That's what Jason looked like just now.
Woo, that was a lot of work to get to the back. Bill, it's your turn.
This guy is giving a clinic in the physics of Judo. No matter what I do, my brute strength isn't enough to overcome the advantage this guy has by using his legs as a lever to keep me down.
He's very strong for a little guy.
Look at the size difference, though. He's as thick as Bill's leg.
Very strong, though. It's all about leverage. You got to take the thought of strength out of Judo. It just doesn't translate.
Yeah, and you can use a lot of energy trying to get out of pins, too.
Come on.
I genuinely feel like I've been in a car accident.
But we didn't just come here to warm up. We need a move, a quick surprise attack, one that came directly from the battlefield to the dojo. That move is a choke called Okiri Irijimi, and it's a killer. Literally.
I see a lot of veins in his head. Let's try that, Bill.
Getting dominant position is critical to securing the choke. Once you're positioned behind your opponent, you roll forward using your momentum multiplied by the leverage of your leg to bring him to his back. Then you wrap your legs around his body, forcing his arm upwards while your hand pulls his gi across his neck.
You use the strength of your legs to maintain your dominant position while you secure the choke. Just a few pounds of pressure on the collar of his gi is enough to reduce the blood flow to the brain to a trickle and end the match. Hold this move for 10 seconds and the fighter will black out. Hold it just a bit longer and he's dead.
Chokes like these are as devastating on the mat as they were on the battlefield, and are a common weapon in the MMA arsenal.
This stuff is great. I love grappling. Gi, no gi, whatever. I can't wait for the fight. This is getting good.
But now, we're headed to the ancient capital of Japan to learn some samurai bone-breaking techniques that are still in use on the street. To learn another move that will help us in our fight against a judo champion, we hopped on one of the fastest rides on the planet. The high-speed Shinkansen bullet train. It's been clocked at test speeds in excess of 275 miles an hour. Today, our destination is Japan's former imperial capital, Kyoto.
Surrounded on three sides by steep mountains, the easily defensible city became the seat of Japan's imperial court in 794. Kyoto remained the capital for over 1,000 years, during which it saw many bloody samurai battles for control of Japan. Then, during the Meiji Restoration, the capital was moved to Tokyo. Today, the streets of Kyoto are some of the safest in the world, and they're kept that way by the Kyoto police and their training in the fighting art of judo.
Inside the main dojo, we met Kyoto PD's head instructor, Murakami Sensei. Our translator was Robert Moran. Because there are virtually no guns in Japan, the police don't need to use guns themselves. Instead, they're able to use judo techniques to bring in the bad guys. In fact, the police were some of the first to popularize judo in Japan.
In 1886, the Tokyo Police Department hosted a contest between Jigoro Kano's judo and the city's most famous jiu-jitsu school to determine which style would be taught to the police. Judo crushed jiu-jitsu, winning 12 of 15 matches with one draw. Judo was chosen as the official style of the police and was catapulted to national popularity. We got changed to start training and quickly learned this aggressive style is just as tough on the mat as it is in the real world.
Can we see that one again?
Can you break the arm like that?
You sure can, yeah.
This isn't just used by Japanese police or in judo. The armbar is one of the most popular moves in MMA today.
To execute it, the judoka grabs his opponent by the elbow.
When you hold him, hold on the joint. Don't hold here. You can control your opponent by holding on the joint.
Then uses his legs and body weight to drive him to the ground.
Hold the ankle, and then roll him over.
With a thrust of his hips, his opponent's elbow is stretched to its breaking point.
Now, important to have the thumb pointing up. Right. And raise your hips. Raise your hips.
He's 70 kilos, I'm 125 kilos. It doesn't really matter when it comes down to an arm bar. It's all about your joint and whether you want your arm the way it's supposed to be for the rest of your life. So you got no choice but tap, 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 tap. I feel like I'm a tap dancer here. There are lots of ways to get your opponent into position for the armbar.
Very crucial.
But the most dynamic is to grab both his wrists and fall backwards. Then use your weight and the force of gravity to pull your opponent to you, catching him with your legs and slamming him to the mat. Keeping his elbow isolated at your hips and his wrist at your chest.
By bending the elbow across the fulcrum of your hips, you're subjecting the weak joint to the leverage of two strong forces: the pull of your thighs on his shoulder and your hands on his wrists. As little as 1,000 pounds of force can be enough to destroy the elbow. The leverage of the armbar can supply much more than that.
Okay, there you go.
Next, we headed to Kyoto's Center of Traditional Martial Arts, the Budokuden. Established in 794 AD by Emperor Kanmu, the Budokuden was a training facility for his new legion of skilled warriors. Warriors who were to become the samurai.
Though samurai armor was often made of leather, silk, and brass instead of plate steel, the entire kit could still weigh as much as 60 pounds. which is why jiu-jitsu had a technique designed specifically to use an attacker's own weight against him. It's called a sacrifice throw.
The head of the Kyoto Judo Association, Onishi Sensei, showed us a sacrifice throw still used in judo called tomoe nage. To execute the tomoe nage throw, a judoka uses his opponent's forward momentum and his own body weight.
Push him back, and then he's going to resist, and at that time you drop down.
Falling backwards as your opponent charges pulls your opponent off balance. Then, you drive one leg into his midsection to guide his momentum, lifting his center of gravity up and over and hurling him to the mat.
You're using your legs only. Okay?
Oh, okay.
You have to pull forward.
And that's to help bring him off balance?
Exactly. Break his balance.
The sacrifice throw is a simple lesson in conservation of energy. The stronger the opponent attacks, the further he gets thrown. It works like a catapult, where your opponent's momentum supplies the counterweight. The faster he's going, the further he's going to fly, and the harder he's going to land.
Oh, getting better.
This throw would be impossible if the other guy wasn't almost charging you, because you have to use his force, his momentum, to throw him head over heels.
Is that better? Good?
Good, very good.
Good job, Jason.
But Onishi Sensei wasn't done with us just yet. There was a reason why there was a group of big judokas here, and the reason was to kick our butts. The official term for it is called randori.
Randori is the equivalent of sparring in boxing. It may not look as tough as an MMA fight, but these are the same kind of throws, joint locks, and chokes used by MMA fighters. And they use the same amount of energy. Randori is tough.
Stay at the office, baby.
Hey, these guys are good, man. They have really good technique. They're very well balanced. They're not the strongest guys, not the fastest, but they move really fluid. They don't try to force things. I think we're ready to go down the road and learn some more stuff.
And to do that, we would have to travel back to the ancient training grounds of a 500-year-old line of warriors. We're headed to the mountains east of Okayama, to the isolated dojo home of one of the greatest jiu-jitsu masters in all of Japan, Takenouchi Sensei. Our translator and guide, a second-degree black belt named Mark Chinnery, led us deep into the hills to meet him.
Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa.
When the Meiji Restoration of the late 19th century outlawed the samurai, their rituals and practices were all but wiped out. But Takenouchi's family strove to keep their 500-year-old traditions alive, including the practice of sword fighting and jiu-jitsu. Once employed by his samurai ancestors to kill, Takenouchi Sensei's system, Takenouchi Ryu, was sure to put us in the right mindset for our fight against a judo champion.
The patron gods of Takenouchi Ryu were Marishten, the goddess of war, and Atago, the god of thunder and fire. Placing a ceremonial gift of sake in front of their shrines, we prayed that they'd guide and protect us during our training.
After the ceremony, Takenouchi Sensei led us to a sacred spot, a mountaintop shrine dedicated to the founding of his family's martial art. Legend has it that in 1532, Sensei's ancestor, Takenouchi Hisamura, came to these mountains to train in isolation. His chosen weapon was the longsword.
And he was practicing on longsword, and then that's when the god talked to him and said, the longsword's okay, but you should be doing short sword techniques as well. And so that's when he started mastering the short sword technique. And then from there, because they're so close, then it went hand to hand.
A samurai would often carry a set of short swords with his long sword. Together, this pairing was known as Disho and symbolized the elite status of a samurai warrior. But his encounter with the spirit convinced Takenouchi Hisamori to focus his techniques not on his longsword, but on the close-in combat of chokes, gouges, throws, and bone breaking that were to become the basics of jiu-jitsu.
It's interesting to learn we come to the top of the mountain, and this is where Takenouchi's ancestors developed jiu-jitsu, from the long sword to the short sword to jiu-jitsu, which eventually bred judo. And it's really intriguing to learn that thousands of people all over the world practice judo because of that.
Now it was time for us to get to work. But the sensei trained old school. There were no mats for us.
Wooden floors, bad joints don't go well together.
Wooden floors and jumping as hard as you can onto them, slamming your feet into them, and then your hand doesn't feel good.
Oh, I think Bill dented the floor a few times.
I think the floor dented me.
The first thing Takenouchi Sensei taught us was the importance of reading our opponent's momentum. Each move we make, from sliding our feet to twisting our hips or dropping a shoulder, changes our momentum. And the same is true for our opponents.
Only by understanding how to see and exploit these changes would we be able to know when to use the attacks that we've learned. When to go for the hip throw, the armbar, or the sacrifice throw.
He's pulling him down, and Bill's natural reaction is to try and pull himself back up. So when he's pulling himself back up, then he's going to try and use his momentum to pull him down.
Instead of trying to force your opponent one way, you take him one way and you let him put himself the other way, and you just help guide him. It's much easier to guide your opponent's energy off course than it is to meet it on course.
Leveraging your opponent's momentum enables even the smallest fighter to gain dominant position, the key to any fight. In jiu-jitsu, you'd use dominant position to kill your opponent. In judo, you use it to score points.
This is one technique. It's breaking your opponent's balance and using that to throw him. Getting lower than your opponent and using your legs to throw him, that's judo, but then the kick afterwards is jiu-jitsu.
So basically all the striking arts are taken away in judo because it's really not competitive to throw somebody then kick them in the head.
It's competitive, it just might not be sportsmanlike.
No. Training with the descendants of real samurai on top of a mountain, this is really intense. This isn't just something that was built for sports. This is something that was built out of warfare, and they still use it today in judo.
As the sun set, we went outside. We'd pushed ourselves hard, but in the process, we'd begun to harness the power of our own minds and bodies. But to the east, our clash with the champion still loomed. To survive, we'd both have to continue to push ourselves. Sensei helped ease our throbbing muscles with strong words of encouragement.
I think he's saying we did a good job, but we got more to learn.
Early the next morning, it was back to work. Instead of their fists, Sensei's students were packing staffs.
So from here on in, we want you guys soon to be able to read your opponent's moves.
That's good. So this is about reading your opponent's moves before they come at you. That's how it translates to judo. We're not going to be taking a stick with us onto the judo mat, but we have to be able to read what our opponent does and react to it.
As the speed and intensity of the exercises increased, we began to sense where he would move next. To visualize the attacks and to counter them.
But we didn't just work our minds. We also worked on our strength by running through the steep mountains and by chopping wood.
Being here has really enveloped 3 different principles: body, mind, spirit. We've strengthened our body through being thrown into hardwood floors and training with each other. Mind, we've learned our techniques over and over and over again and practiced them. And spirit, on a visceral level, now we're moving into things like knowing our opponent and what he's gonna do and being able to react to him. The guy we're fighting, he's an intense guy. He's been beating and conditioning his body for years. And I think these moves that we're learning and how to use our energy is gonna help us in our judo match.
Thank you.
Yeah, he thinks we did a great job, and I feel great about it.
Sweet. I think I did good, man. I'm getting my hips into my throws, which is important because you need to throw people in judo.
It was time to put our hard-earned skills to the test, not in training, but in a hardcore matchup against a real judo champion.
Our crusade to learn the foundations of judo has taken us from the police training of Kyoto to the remote dojos of the samurai, and finally, back to Tokai University in Tokyo. Now one of us would face off with a judo champion. Back in Tokai's main dojo, we met our challenger face to face.
Hey, Coach.
Coach.
How are you? Good to see you again.
Welcome back.
Thank you. You guys got everyone in here training, huh?
Yeah. Okawa, Yasuga. Let's introduce him. He's Yasuga Okawa, your opponent.
How long have you been training in judo?
About 22 years.
22 years. Wow.
Watching Okawa in action, it was clear they'd pick the biggest, baddest judoka they could find to take us on. Okawa's a guy who's not only strong, but has spent years mastering the techniques we're just now getting the hang of.
He's got a low center of gravity. He's a thick guy, man.
Yeah, he looks tough.
Yeah, he looks like he can toss you around with ease.
Oh!
He doesn't even move. I love how, like, when this guy is pushing him all around, he's just like a rock.
Yeah.
He just kind of hangs out and looks for it, and then takes it whenever he wants it. You've got our work cut out for us either way.
Okawa had a deep understanding of momentum and center of gravity, and a mastery of the complex body mechanics of judo's moves, which would make him a very tough opponent for whichever one of us decided to fight him.
Well, I think you got a great jiu-jitsu background, but I think with my strength and size, I can push this guy all over the mat. I don't think he'll have a chance if I just decide to bull rush him.
Yeah, but my concern is that is he just gonna be able to kind of stall you both out because you're bigger and stronger and he's a better judo player. See, I know that I would be kind of more active and moving around. It might be harder for him to mount a ground offensive on me.
You're definitely faster, and I think you got more technique than I do.
I'm gonna go with speed and technique on this one. This judo seems very technical.
It's all yours, brother.
All right, man. Time to get changed.
All right.
Our match would occur here, the main dojo of Tokai. And just like in my MMA fights, I needed to prepare my mind as much as my body.
Right before fights, I'm just quiet. It's me time. Gotta get my head in the right place.
You plan on attacking his legs at all?
Yeah, my whole plan is gonna be stay out of his comfort zone and shoot. I'm gonna try to attack his legs more than his upper body because I think he's more used to guys attacking his upper body. But, you know, this guy's been doing this for 20 years. I'm sure he's seen everything.
Or maybe not.
I heard he practiced jiu-jitsu, so this is my first time to fight jiu-jitsu player. I want to fight judo strategy, not jiu-jitsu strategy. Just grab gi and try to throw him. Not newaza, not ground.
A little more tape. A little more prayers.
You ready to roll?
You ready, Hollywood?
Let's go.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. This is the Mecca of judo. Better place to have a match. Your match, Hollywood. Your match, baby.
Our fights would be 3 rounds. Each round will be 2 minutes long, or until one of us scores a full point, called ippon.
The scoring in judo is based in its roots on the battlefield. For a judo move to score ippon, it must be decisive. It can be a throw, a pin, a choke, or a lock. A move that would on the battlefield mean death or submission for the loser.
With the yell of Hajime, the match began.
For the drag, Jason. For the drag, it's there. Oh, he's sweeping. Watch the foot. He's looking for a sweep.
The first round was all about feeling out my opponent, trying to find his center of balance, probing for weakness, and looking for a point of attack. I went for an armbar like I had learned at the Kyoto Police Department. But Okawa brought his arms in and we stalled out on the mat. Agamizu-sensei stood us back up and we started sizing each other up again. I got caught looking at his feet and Okawa dropped me with a move that I should have seen coming. An Uchimata throw. Advantage, Okawa.
I think he,
That grip
yeah.
is nearly impossible to get off. I can't wait till he grabs me. I've got to play more active.
You're just gonna have to break it. If he does get in, break his wrist, but before that,
I'm gonna try shooting right off the bat.
take a leg. I would take a leg. See how he reacts.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it. You got it, go. Suck it in, suck it in.
He was too strong for a leg sweep and again had me by the gi. My only option, sacrifice. Remembering my lessons from the Butokuden, I went for a sacrifice throw. But Okawa shifted his momentum and we went to the mat.
Crank him down. There you go. Nice, nice. Keep working the gi.
With throws and sweeps not working, it was time to go to a signature MMA move, a triangle choke. This has been money for me in the past.
Triangle.
I almost had the choke, but Okawa held me off just long enough to stall out the match. When we got back up, he caught me with a foot sweep and smashed me to the mat. But with his weight, there was no getting up. I was down 0-2. Okawa was clearly in control. This match now boiled down to one thing: pride.
Concentrate now. Go, 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 go.
I set up for a sacrifice throw, but transitioned to a flying armbar. Missed him by inches. With that, it was over.
He's a good competitor. He's good at ground technique. So if he practices some techniques, he will be a good judo player.
I think you did good.
I think it's easier to move you than him. I can't toss him. I can't sweep him. His base is just so solid.
And on the mat, we can just walk away, wiser and uninjured.
This guy's good.
But we've learned that there's more to judo than just a sport. It doesn't end in the dojo.
It's a real martial art, one with its feet firmly planted in the bloody conflicts of feudal Japan, one that reveals the true science of the samurai.